My wife, 27, and I, male 30, own a sizable farm that's usually the nexus of family events. 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 300 acres, and electrical hookups for 4 campers, so the whole clan can come to stay for extended visits in the summer. We built it that way deliberately. My cousin Bill, male 56, has a daughter, Alice, 18, from his first marriage. His first wife was an immigrant with no family in our country and no contact with any family in her home country. Unfortunately, she passed away when Alice was 2, and Bill remarried Tanya, female 52, 6 months later. They have since had 3 kids. Everything in their house revolves around either the boys, their 2 oldest together, or their princess, their daughter together, and Alice is left behind. She doesn't get to go on family trips. They wouldn't pay for extracurricular stuff. She couldn't take elective classes that had extra fees, etc. I'm not a smart man, but I recognize a kid hurting inside and being neglected. She's like Mr. Hyde with them and Dr. Jekyll elsewhere. But Alice is a brat. Typical teenage acting out, but cranked up. Slamming doors, screaming matches with her stepmom, swearing. Probably 3 or 4 big blowouts a week, and sometimes over some disproportionately small stuff. I've watched her grow, and the acting out came after the exclusion from family stuff. For the last 4 summers, she's been coming to work on my farm because her parents don't want her around during summer break. She turned 18 recently. Leading up to her birthday, her dad was adamant that she was being kicked out of the house when she turned 18 because it will teach her responsibility. We, wife Alice and I, discussed it, and early on her birthday, we pulled up with my truck and packed her stuff up. We only packed things she purchased herself or those given to her by another person. My boss got creative with our benefits provider to get Alice on my medical benefits until she finishes university. She starts in a few weeks, so she can go to therapy and get back into sports while saving her money. This is where it all comes apart. Bill and Tanya are angry that we took her in and refuse to go to family events. Part of the family refuses to attend as well because I'm, quote, undermining Bill and Tanya. I'll understand when I have kids. After they refused to participate in events, a few others said that with gas being so expensive and not everyone attending, they'd skip as well. My answer of, okie dokie, come if you want and don't if you don't, further upset people who thought I should have tried harder to get people to come. So now we're down to about a fourth of the family in attendance for events. My aunt talked to Bill and Tanya, who would bury the hatchet if Alice stayed in a dorm instead of our house to smooth things over. I think that's dumb, but I'm dumb and stubborn. My wife thinks it's dumb, and she's really smart, but also very much attached to the situation. Alice said she'd rather stay with us, but would try the dorms to help make peace. Am I the idiot for not going with the dorm suggestion to keep the peace? Taking Alice in resulted in a significant portion of our family siding with Bill and Tanya and refusing to come to family events. We have 1 or 2 big gatherings per year and all the major holidays, Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, etc. So the older family members are upset that they're not going to see the grandkids, great-grandkids, and family members that live far away as much. Not the idiot. Wow, they mistreated her for years, kicked her out of the house, and now they want to demand that you kick her out too? Horrible people, and you shouldn't think twice about the dorm. If the rest of the family wants to throw a snit fit in solidarity, let them. But be clear, this is not up for a group vote or unsolicited suggestions, especially if the goal is to make Bill and Tanya feel like they're teaching responsibility to a kid you already know is perfectly capable of working hard when she's got something she considers worth working for. You know that Bill won't kick the younger ones out to teach them some responsibility. I would tell your family members that they looked the other way while Bill neglected her for 16 years. They can darn well look the other way when you're not neglecting her. And for giggles, tell them Alice will inherit your place if you don't have kids. This whole situation reeks of the new wife not wanting to take care of some other woman's child and slowly turning her father over to her way of thinking. I'm also going to go out on a limb and say that there could be some racial issues at play too, if Alice doesn't look like the other kids. The new wife has had 16 years to work on the husband to get to this point. Mini update. I ripped the Band-Aid off with the old fam jam and told them that fewer mouths to feed isn't the punishment they thought it was. Anyone else who was coming is still welcome, and I'd have the extra cash from not feeding so many people to help the folks concerned about gas prices make it out if they so choose. I'm in 4 different family group chats, and they're all lighting up. I'm going to turn my phone on silent for a while and let the sparks fly. When I was home, I received a call from my sister-in-law out of the blue last night, informing me that her mother had been in a car accident due to a seizure. This was a single car accident, and no one else was hurt. My sister-in-law told me that her mother was in the hospital, but was fine and wanted to go home. My wife was at the tennis court with some friends during this time, and my sister-in-law tried calling her a couple of times but couldn't reach her, which is why she called me. The tennis courts are about a 5 to 7 minute walk from where I live. A couple of hours later, my wife gets home, and she first says, "You couldn't have walked down and told me?" in a loud, angry tone. I didn't text her about this incident, nor did I go down to the tennis courts to alert her because her sister told me their mother was fine, and I figured she would see multiple missed calls from her sister anyway. Later on in the night, she grabs the car key and tells me she's going to the hospital because her sister claims she needed help. Am I the idiot for not telling my wife her mother was in a not-so-serious car accident? So, out of curiosity, what's wrong with you? Of course you are the idiot. Why couldn't you just walk down the street? Why couldn't you try to call your wife? Why do you think your wife didn't deserve to know that her mother was in a car accident? Good grief. You are the idiot. Dude, it's a 5-minute walk down the street. So her mother had a seizure and was in a car accident. Irrespective of being able to do something or not, she would have wanted to know ASAP. People are aware they aren't doctors and can't fix their loved ones, but they want to be there for moral support and help make them more comfortable. So, at a minimum, they want to be able to check in with loved ones. To be fair, it was 10 minutes for the round trip. Geez, if her mother was really fine, then her sister wouldn't have needed to call her multiple times and then try to reach OP. So it is urgent, but it's not I don't know if she's going to make it kind of urgent. OP should have told his wife immediately, and then she could have called her sister to check in after and hear for herself about her mother's condition. You're very lucky that her mom didn't take a turn. You don't have a crystal ball and don't know what'll happen in the future. They had her in a hospital for a reason. Imagine explaining why you didn't tell your wife if things didn't stay positive. Dear Lord, how could you think you're in the right on this, OP? My sister and I were pregnant at the same time. We started discussing baby names, and I said I would not tell her the one my husband and I chose for our son. My sister is a jerk and always enjoyed taking things that meant a lot to me when we were growing up. Well, she begged and even got our mom involved. So I finally told her I was naming my son after my husband's grandfather, a classic old name like Herbert or Ambrose. Sure enough, she has her baby, and lo and behold, his first name is the name I told her. She said it was always on her list, and it wasn't like it belonged to me. I guess she expected me to blow a gasket or something. When my son was born, I gave him the name my husband and I agreed on. It suits him, and he's perfect. My sister's telling everyone I tricked her into giving her son a goofy name. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. I'm confused about how OP is an idiot. She told her sister a ridiculous name so she wouldn't steal the actual name she wanted. And after, the sister begged her to tell her. And what does the sister do? Decide to use said dumb name? If you give someone a rope and they hang themselves, that's on them. I don't understand why people are calling OP an idiot. Her sister didn't have to choose the name. It was always on her list. And it's not like OP owned the name. That was entirely her choice. Her sister chose the name maliciously and was angry when OP didn't get upset. OP didn't even want to share in the first place. I mean, who chooses the kid's name just to make someone angry versus choosing something they like? OP, your sister has some serious issues, and I'd just steer clear of her. Poor Herbert Ambrose. How did you trick her if the name was always on her list? Your sister is stupid for telling people she was tricked. That's basically admitting she was, in fact, lying about why she chose the name. It's her fault because she took the name for the sole purpose of taking it away from you. You did well, OP. I'd be on low contact with your sister, though, because she sounds super toxic. I'd been renting from a landlord for a few years, and he was a typical landlord. Take the rent, do as few repairs as cheap as possible, etc. I'm sure you know the drill. He was also kind of late on stuff. Like every year, the lease says renewals should be sent out 2 months before the end of the lease to give the option, and every year he procrastinates until the last week or two of the lease. I was looking to buy my first house, and I closed on one 4 months before my lease was up, but I kept some overlap to live in the apartment while repairing the house. 2 months before the lease was up, like usual, my landlord forgot to send out the renewals. I thought of telling him I wouldn't be renewing, but then I remembered that my neighbors who moved had trouble with him bringing way too many potential tenants to tour. Nobody wanted the apartment because the online listing was a bait and switch, so people would see something looking in good repair and then come to tour and see it was crap, and nobody wanted to sign the lease. So we kept bringing more people instead of making an honest listing at an honest price. So I didn't say anything. I just kept fixing up the house and moving my stuff. Then 1 week before my lease expired, my landlord texted me the renewal. I didn't see it because I had my phone on Don't Disturb, but the following day he kept texting, wanting my signed renewal. I told him I don't plan on renewing, and he got really angry, demanding to know what apartment I was moving to next. I got the impression he wanted to call my next landlord to complain about me. Anyway, I told him I was moving back in with my parents. I didn't want to tell him about the house because of the temper he was getting with me. He started showing the apartment immediately, but I'd already finished moving out, so it didn't bother me. But when I stopped by to turn in my keys and ask for my security deposit, he got angry, saying that I had some nerve asking for $1,300 when I'd just screwed him out of a month's rent by not giving notice. I told him that the security deposit was for damages, and if he wanted to withhold it, he would have to send over an itemized list of damages and receipts for repairs. He gave me the security deposit back, but yelled at me that he took care of his tenants and that I was selfish for leaving without notice. I just left, but I guess I'm feeling kind of conflicted. On the one hand, it is literally his job, his only job, to handle leases and find out who's renewing. And if he forgot, that's not really my problem. But I knew I was leaving for the better part of a year, and I told him in less than a week. Am I the idiot for not telling my landlord I bought a house? Not the idiot. He didn't follow the lease rules, since you didn't mention any rules about a 30-day notice. That it seems to have to go from lease to lease, that's his bad, not yours. It would have been very nice for you to give him a month's notice, but it isn't an idiot move not to do so, especially as he was combative and wanted to sabotage you. He was late with the lease and disruptive to prospective tenants. Yep, he doesn't follow his own rules. Instead, he takes the gamble of procrastinating on the lease renewals that some tenants won't renew. He's also the idiot for expecting more courtesy than he gives and threatening to withhold the deposit. You don't have to give notice with a lease. The end of the lease is the notice, and maybe you would have known sooner if he'd actually done his job correctly. It's on him to send the renewal and to keep track of his property. You only have to give notice if you want to leave before it ends. He is reaping what he had sowed. Unfortunately, he didn't send out the renewals in a timely fashion, so he screwed himself over on that. He only has himself to blame. Where I live, there's a stunt driving law. If you are speeding 50 kilometers per hour or more over the speed limit, or doing anything else that constitutes stunt driving, such as racing or other unsafe stunts, the police will impound the vehicle for 14 days, on top of summoning you to court and a month-long license suspension. The impound is mandatory, and it doesn't matter who the vehicle belongs to, even if it's your work vehicle or you borrowed it from a friend. After 14 days, you have to pay the impound fees to get the vehicle back, and the longer you wait, the more the fees rack up. I have a younger sister. I'm 30 and she's 25. She took my car without permission. I don't live with her and my dad. She and her friends broke in and took it. She got caught for stunt driving and speeding, and my car got impounded. My dad and my grandparents told me to say she had permission to take my car. I didn't do that, and they lost it. If a car was stolen, the owner could take it back without the impound. We don't live in the city. There are no buses, subways, cabs, or Ubers here. I need my car for work. Without a car, I have no way to go to my clients' homes. My dad said I could rent a car while my car is an impound. I can't afford to rent a car or to pay the impound fees to actually get it out of impound when the time comes. He didn't offer to pay for the rental and the impound fees or to lend me a vehicle, and neither did anyone else who was mad at me for telling the police the car had been stolen. And they definitely wouldn't pay my bills if I got fired for not going to work. I don't know what people are expecting me to do here. I don't know why my sister did it, and I haven't talked to her because my dad says she's not talking to me because of what I did. If she had crashed my car or hurt someone else, I would have been held responsible as the car's owner. If she hadn't been stopped by the police and just brought my car back whenever she and her friends were done, I obviously would not have reported the car stolen. I would have yelled at her and told her off, but not gotten the police involved. But now I feel like I had no choice, because if I said she had permission and my car was impounded, I would have gotten fired from my job and probably would have had to sign my car over to the impound lot because there's no way I could afford the impound fees. My insurance would not cover them since an illegal act impounded it. I checked. Was I on the wrong side of things because I told the police she and her friends broke in and didn't have permission? So now she's been slapped with a charge for it on top of everything. I just don't know what else I could have done, but I'm getting so much blowback from some people in my life. Am I the idiot? So you had two options. Number one, lie about giving your sister permission and absorb your sister's mistake and watch your finances and life fall apart. Or number two, tell the truth and place all the consequences back on your sister's doorstep because these were her choices and mistakes. Not the idiot. Why should you set yourself on fire to keep her out of trouble? OP, your sister and your parents now have to pay the price for her insanely immature behavior. Enabling her by lying probably would have just led her to pulling this crap again by stealing from someone else. Better she learns now that the world doesn't revolve around her. The family seems more concerned with protecting the wild child than with your job, finances, and good name. She's reaping the consequences of her actions, not your fault. Yep, it's abundantly clear who the golden child is, and it's not OP. But wait, your father helped your 25-year-old sister steal your car? What kind of crazy family do you have? Please don't feel any guilt about your sister's situation. She and your father deserve anything they get. Going no contact with this bunch would be no great loss. I, 19, live with my dad, stepmom, and my half-brother, tween. For weeks it was planned that my dad and stepmom were going to her parents' 40th wedding anniversary at some fancy restaurant this past Friday night. My brother and I weren't invited because we're not adults. Since I didn't get an invitation and didn't want to be stuck at home with just my brother, I decided to make plans myself, and my boyfriend and I decided to go on a date. My dad and stepmom wanted me to babysit my brother, but like they've never paid me to babysit him ever, and he's hyperactive, so no thanks. After complaining for a bit, they hired a babysitter for him. So Friday comes around and I'm doing my hair and makeup and all that getting ready for the date. My dad and stepmom had already left for dinner. While I was getting ready, I got a call from my stepmom in the car on the way to the restaurant, saying that the babysitter had canceled and that I'd have to stay home and watch him. I told her I was sorry, but I had plans I didn't want to cancel. She said it was too late to call anyone and I had to stay. I said I couldn't and that I'd be at home for another 40-ish minutes, which would be enough time for them to come back home, and they have to be back to watch him. She just hung up. Well, I finished getting ready and even waited another 15 minutes, and they were still out. So I texted them I was leaving and left my brother home alone. We live in a nice neighborhood, and I'm pretty sure I stayed home alone when I was his age, so I was sure it'd be fine. especially since they didn't bother to come back home. Anyways, long story short, when I came back home, they were already home, and my stepmom was angry that I left my brother home alone. She called me irresponsible and said I didn't care about family, etc. She also told me I'd have to pay for this vase my brother broke. This is unreasonable since I warned them I was leaving, and they had the opportunity to come back, but I don't know. Am I the idiot? Edit. My grandmother gifted the house to my mom and dad as a wedding gift. When my mom left my dad, she gave him the house under the condition I could live there up until I finished grad school if I wanted to. I only get free housing not because they choose to, but because of a contract my dad signed that he's forced to comply with. Everything else I pay for myself, and I make my own food and clean my messes. And I have babysat for him plenty of times because they've never hired a babysitter before. Because why pay if I do it for free? You didn't technically leave a young boy at home. They did. They took a bad bet and it failed. They should have come home instead of trying to strong-arm you into it. You gave them several warnings and waited and waited and waited. Oh, and they never hired that babysitter. You were lied to. Not the idiot, OP. Disagree. You are the idiot. You left a young child on their own, which is really crappy on your part too, especially given you're 19. You're an adult, not a child, and you should know better than to leave a child that age on their own. There's no excuse for that. It is your poor brother I feel sorry for. I honestly don't believe there was a babysitter in the first place. They didn't think OP would call their bluff. The problem is, though, that if in the end OP had stayed home, parents would know they could pull this trick again. It's a messed up situation where you don't want anything to happen to your brother, but leaving does set the tone. By the time they're his age, kids usually can stay alone for a couple of hours. And even with the kids who can't be fully trusted unsupervised, it tends to be more because you don't trust them not to mess up the house, rather than themselves. That was exactly what I was thinking. Like, who leaves before the babysitter comes? If there had been a babysitter, the parents would have been there to meet this brand new babysitter, show them around, introduce them to the kid, etc. No way they just would have some rando show up at the house and be all, "Okay, kid I've never met before, I'm taking care of you now." Next time if I was OP, because I have a hard time thinking this is a single incident, I would tell stepmom to come back home, or I'm calling CPS that you abandoned your kid when I told you that I wasn't babysitting. I work in a warehouse with about 26 other people. I've been there for 5 years now. I have a Japanese AITA, and these dogs shed a lot. One of my new coworkers is allergic to dogs. This has caused an issue. When they use the break room, they start sneezing a lot. I have pictures of my dog at my workstation, so they know I have him. It's not a secret or anything. They went to the boss and said they needed to be accommodated because of their medical condition. He came to me and asked if I could please do anything. So I kept a clean set of coveralls in my locker and put them on as soon as I got to work. Apparently, this was not good enough. So I just started staying out of the break room. Nope. If they came into my zone, they started sneezing. Finally, they told my boss that I should be forced to get rid of my dog because it was affecting their work. The thing is, I know that I'm not the only one with a dog. At least 3 of the guys I work with have dogs. I told my boss that I would never consider rehoming my dog, and they could just take some Benadryl or something. Now they're crying that they might have to quit because they can't work here. I just don't care, but they certainly do. They say I'm an idiot for prioritizing my dog over their livelihood. I thought you were bringing the dog to work and ignoring their allergies, but no, they're just moaning that you have a dog. If you volunteered to change your overalls and stay out of the break room, you've done everything realistically possible to accommodate them. It's an absolute joke that they'd even suggest making a random coworker rehome their dog, when, as you said, they can just take some Benadryl. Agreed. Your job should never be in a position to ask you to change your home life. What you do off the clock, who or what you have in your house, is your own business. What will this coworker do if they see a dog in the street? A service dog in a coffee shop? The world can't cater to them. They have to cater to their issues. Not the idiot, and take it up with HR. Also, I find it super suspect. This coworker is supposedly so allergic to dogs, they react even when OP changes into clean coveralls. Their coworker couldn't ride airplanes without reacting, even if there wasn't a dog on the flight. Also, if 3 other coworkers have dogs, why is OP specifically singled out? I'm not saying the food worker is faking their allergy, but something's not adding up here. OP, take the dog's pictures down. Say he's gone now. Keep the dog. And then, when a coworker's allergies mysteriously clear up, go to HR and the manager and tell them the whole story, citing the coworker for creating a hostile work environment for you. My husband and many of my family members are calling me an idiot, and I'm really not sure anymore. For context, 4 years ago when my daughter was a tween, she desperately wanted a pool. She said that all of her friends had pools, and she was the only one who didn't have one. Plus, she loved swimming, so she insisted that she would use it daily in the summer. My husband and I could afford one, but as I'm sure some of you know, pools are very expensive, and neither of us really like swimming. So we wanted my daughter to understand the cost she was asking for. So we agreed that we would install a pool, but that once she was old enough to start working, she would pay us back for half of it. She quickly agreed. Well, flash forward to now. She's just a teen and just got her first job, and now she wants to save up for a prom dress she likes. I reminded her of our agreement about the pool, and she no longer wants to uphold her end of the agreement. So I insisted, threatening to take away her phone and car privileges if she didn't pay her father and me back. Now she won't speak to me. My husband agrees with her, saying that we can't have honestly expected a tween to keep her ends of the agreement. For me, this isn't even about the money. It's about teaching my young daughter the right morals to live with. I don't want her to think she can just go around making deals for her benefit and not upholding them. Am I the idiot? Dude, you got into a verbal agreement with a tween for thousands of dollars and are now trying to enforce it? Seriously? 4 years later? The right morals to live with are that kids cannot legally enter contracts. That's the moral. You are the idiot and just very, very misguided. LOL, yeah. A kid cannot comprehend how screwed they are by agreeing to pay back like, what, $20,000? That's absurd. There are plenty of ways to teach our children morals that don't involve forcing a child to pay for a pool in an agreement she made when she was still in 5th or 6th grade. Side question, if you expect her to pay for half of the pool, will she get a real estate cut if you ever sell the house? Having a pool increases the price of a house in real estate, so if she owns half the pool, she's entitled to part of that profit. In other words, you've already seen a return. I'm also angry that they got a pool that cost thousands of dollars and not just the $300 pool from Walmart or the equivalent. It might not be as cool as an in-ground pool, but it's still a deep pool for a kid. What mom immediately goes, oh yes, let's excavate and build a pool, instead of going to the store and buying a pool, or just a $100 annual membership to a local water park? At first, I thought her end of the deal would be to clean the pool and keep it up, not pay for half of it. Who in their right mind makes a deal with a kid like that? Unless you give her equity in the house when you sell it in the future, get over yourself with this. My God, this is one of the most ridiculous things I've read here. The husband probably thought it was a joke. You're a double idiot. First, for making such an agreement, and second, for trying to enforce it. We usually do intermittent fasting, meaning we don't eat after 5 p.m. But when I'm on my period, my appetite gets several times bigger. Last night, I craved a chicken sandwich with chili, and I asked my mother-in-law whether she wanted any. She said no, she wasn't hungry, and since my husband didn't eat then, I only made one. I quickly gobbled it up, and when my mother-in-law came into the kitchen again, the plate was already wiped clean. She asked me in shock, "You're done that fast?" I was pretty embarrassed and told her it was my favorite. Then she said, "And you didn't think to at least offer people staying in the house with you a bite?" I was confused and told her, "But you said you weren't hungry, and Jake, my husband, doesn't eat at this hour." She said, "You didn't think to store some in the fridge in case I do get hungry?" I told her I was sorry. I really didn't think that far ahead. I'll make a new one. But then I remembered that we were all out of chili and sheepishly told her I'd go buy some. She told me not to bother, but I insisted. But even after looking at several convenience stores, I couldn't find the brand I was looking for. And since it was nearly midnight by then, I didn't have many options. So I called Jake and asked him what I should do, and he told me just to get one from a snack near us. When I got home, though, and brought it to my mother-in-law, she refused to eat it and said, "I told you to forget it. I don't eat takeout." She insisted she didn't want it, nor did she want anything else as she wasn't hungry, that she had just smelled the chili earlier and wanted a bite. I told her, "Okay, if you need anything, let me know." I went back to the kitchen and ate that sandwich too. The next day, Jake and I woke up to find my mother-in-law gone, with a text sent to my husband that she won't be putting her foot in our house ever again for the amount of disrespect I showed her. Apparently, she did get hungry later and went looking for the sandwich and couldn't find it. Jake was livid that I ate that one too and told me this was my fault and I should go with him to apologize to her. I got angry too and asked him why she couldn't have just asked directly instead of going around all these circles in the first place. He ignored me and grabbed his jacket and keys and left. Am I really in the wrong here? Not the idiot. If someone tells you they don't want any, they don't get any. Words mean things. I don't need takeout does not mean save it for me for later. I'm so proud of you for accidentally outing this woman's manipulative behavior. Chaotic good. I picture everyone in this house sneaking back into the kitchen to eat random food, and the next person being so sad that it's gone. To be clear, you went far beyond trying to replicate the chicken chili sandwich the first time. That was far more than required by standards of kindness. You asked and she declined. Twice. Girl, she's setting you up at that point, but you ate right through her plan. I love it. What the holy heck did I just read? The topper is that your husband thinks you did something wrong. Forget mother-in-law. You've got a husband problem. I can't believe he was okay with you running around at midnight for his mom. OP, please have a long, hard look at your relationship with your husband. Let's look past the obvious here. The fact that you felt the need to make her a sandwich after she refused is weird. The fact that you went out to try and buy ingredients to make one, despite her saying she doesn't want one, is concerning. The fact that you then had to call your husband to figure out what to do when you didn't find the exact ingredient is deeply troubling. It all gives the impression that you're almost maniacally afraid of somehow slighting her. Jake and his mother, after all this, feeling that the problem is you didn't do enough, is completely insane and gives us a hint where that fear is coming from. There's a much deeper problem there, somewhere. This could be a you issue, but that last part points to the problem not being you at all. Please Google cycle of abuse and assess if you recognize a pattern. Glad someone else is acknowledging how weird this all is. The way OP speaks about her mother-in-law, you'd think she was a lowly servant to a tyrannical princess or something. Like, I thought the moment the mother-in-law started sulking after OP failed to read her mind would be the end of it. But bending over backward to wait on her hands and foot? Really? What's actually going on here? I'm curious about the ages and living situation here, because there's obviously more to these dynamics than this one incident. This happened last week, and I've been torn over it ever since. I'm a 64-year-old female, and I have one son, Robert, with my late husband, James. Robert is engaged to Sarah, who's also 35. Last Sunday, Sarah and Robert came to my house for dinner. We were chatting, and I told them a story about James, whom Sarah unfortunately never met. While I was pregnant, James was very excited and insisted on putting everything together, cribs, changing tables, etc. Bless him, but my James was not much of a carpenter, and one day when I was putting Robert in his crib, the whole thing broke. I caught Robert in time, so no harm was done, thankfully. After the story, I made a joke along the lines of Sarah never having that problem if they have children, because Robert is actually a carpenter. She burst into tears and asked me why I was being so cruel. I was taken aback and asked her what was wrong, as I certainly hadn't meant to upset her, and I was sorry if I had. She told me they discovered recently that she's infertile and she would never be able to have children. even with IVF. I apologized profusely and said if I had known, I would have never made a joke about it. James and I struggled with having Robert, and we were never able to give him siblings, so I felt awful that I had hurt Sarah like that. The mood was ruined after that, and Robert and Sarah decided to leave early. On Tuesday, I ran into Robert's best friend and his wife while I was out shopping. His wife is good friends with Sarah and seemed unusually cold towards me. I asked why, and she said she hadn't known I was so rude and that I should be ashamed of mocking Sarah's infertility. It turns out that the story's been spread that I viciously insulted Sarah and insinuated that she shouldn't marry Robert. That story even got back to our family, and a lot of our relatives were quite upset with me. I apologized when I made the joke, but now I'm wondering if I really did overstep that badly and insult Sarah horribly. I don't want to be a bad mother-in-law, and I get along quite well with Sarah ordinarily. Am I the idiot here? Not the idiot. You joked about your late husband's carpentry skills, not your daughter-in-law's infertility, as you were completely unaware of their situation. You cannot insult someone about infertility if you do not know that they're infertile. That Sarah has chosen to make you a villain to everyone who will listen says more about her than it does you. I'm also wondering if there's missing info. The story your son and his fiancée are sharing is so dramatically different from what you described. I think there is way more going on here. It doesn't feel like a simple misunderstanding or people being overly sensitive. You should call your son to understand better what's going on. No idiots here. It seems like Sarah was in a very vulnerable and delicate state, and I could totally see her misunderstanding what you meant to emphasize in the story, especially considering how common it is to pressure women in her age group to have kids. According to your story, you were not deliberately insensitive and didn't have all the information. I'd also be curious if you or anyone else in Sarah's life, like if her parents or relatives, have been putting pressure on her about kids, purposely or not purposely. This could have been the metaphorical straw that broke the camel's back.